Hey guys, it's Karenology. This one is pure chaos. You have to hear how it all went down.
The wind howled through the night, tearing apart everything in its path. By morning, what once stood as a peaceful suburban neighborhood was reduced to a chaotic mess of debris and shattered dreams. My house, the one I built with years of hard work and careful savings, was nothing more than a pile of rubble. Standing beside me was my teenage daughter Emma, clutching her stuffed bear as tears streamed down her face. "We'll rebuild," I promised her, though I could barely muster the strength to believe it myself. In the days that followed, I focused all my energy on starting over. The insurance payout barely covered the basics, but I was determined. As I began clearing the debris, I noticed Karen Blackwood, the chairwoman of our Homeowner Association, approaching with her signature clipboard and smug expression. She'd always had a way of making the smallest inconvenience feel like a personal affront, and today was no different. "John," she started, her tone dripping with condescension, "you can't just start rebuilding without submitting plans to the Homeowner Association for approval." "Karen, my house is gone," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I'm just trying to clear the lot and get back on my feet." Her lips curled into a tight smile. "I understand your situation, but rules are rules. You'll need to pay the $69,000 fine for unauthorized construction. Also, all rebuilding plans must adhere to our updated guidelines." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. $69,000 for what? I haven't even started rebuilding yet. "Consider it a warning," she replied, her tone icy. "We have standards to maintain in this neighborhood, John. You wouldn't want to set a bad example, would you?" I stared at her, disbelief turning into anger. "A tornado destroyed my home. You're fining me for trying to rebuild?" Karen's expression didn't waver. "This is about preserving the integrity of the community. Submit your plans, pay the fine, and we'll move forward." I watched her walk away, her heels clicking against the cracked pavement, and felt a surge of rage. How could someone be so heartless? But there was no time to dwell on it. I had work to do. Over the next week, I faced obstacle after obstacle. My building materials were mysteriously damaged overnight. A worker I hired to help with cleanup quit after receiving an anonymous tip that my property was under investigation. Then one morning I found a notice taped to what was left of my front gate. "Construction halted by order of Homeowner Association." I stormed into the Homeowner Association's office. The paper crumpled in my fist. Karen sat behind her desk, flanked by two other board members who looked more like her personal entourage than concerned neighbors. "What is this?" I demanded, throwing the notice onto her desk. "You're shutting me down for trying to rebuild my home?" Karen didn't even look up. "You're in violation of several regulations. Until you comply, all construction must cease." "What regulations? My house was here before these rules even existed." She finally met my gaze, her eyes cold. "Rules evolve, John. It's your responsibility to stay updated." The other board members murmured their agreement, like puppets on strings. I felt my frustration boiling over. "This isn't about rules," I said, my voice rising. "This is about control. You're using this disaster as an excuse to bully me." Karen's expression hardened. "If you can't abide by the community's standards, perhaps you should consider relocating." Her words hung in the air, a thinly veiled threat. I left the office shaking with anger, but determined. They wanted a fight? Fine. I'd give them one. As I walked back to my property, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. It was a representative from a construction company, one that Karen had recommended. The man's tone was friendly, almost too friendly, as he offered to handle all the necessary approvals and construction for a discounted rate. "How much?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. $150,000, he said, as if it were a bargain, "and we'll deal with the Homeowner Association for you." I hung up without replying. This wasn't just about Karen, it was a racket. They were working together to squeeze me dry. That night, as Emma slept on the couch in our temporary rental, I sat surrounded by documents trying to find a way out. My anger fueled me, but so did my love for my daughter. This was our home, our future. I wasn't about to let them take it from us. But I knew one thing for sure. Karen and her cronies weren't going to play fair. And if I wanted to win, I'd have to be ready for anything. The next morning, I woke to the sound of hammering on the door. Groggy and disoriented, I stumbled to open it and found two men in suits standing there, their expressions grim. One of them held a thick stack of papers. "Mr. Carter?" the taller of the two asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. He handed me the stack. "You've been served. The Homeowner Association is filing a lawsuit against you for multiple violations, including unauthorized construction and failure to pay assessed fines." I stared at the documents, my stomach sinking. "A lawsuit? Are you serious? This is my property." The man shrugged. "Take it up with your lawyer. Have a good day." They left without another word, leaving me holding the papers. As I flipped through them, I realized just how deep the Homeowner Association scheme went. They weren't just trying to find me. They were trying to force me out entirely. Emma came into the room, rubbing her eyes. "Dad, what's going on?" I forced a smile. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetie. Go get ready for school." But inside, I was seething. This wasn't just about money or rules. It was about power. Karen wanted to prove that she could break me, and she was willing to use every tool at her disposal to do it. Later that day, I met with a lawyer. He was sympathetic but not optimistic. "These cases are tough," he said, glancing over the documents. "Homeowner associations have a lot of legal leverage. Unless you can prove they're acting in bad faith, it's going to be an uphill battle. They're sabotaging my construction, harassing me with fines, and now this lawsuit," I argued. "That's not bad faith?" He sighed. "It's not that simple. You'll need evidence, emails, recordings, witnesses. Can you get any of that?" I thought about the construction company's suspicious offer and Karen's smug threats. "I might be able to," I said. The next few days were a blur of meetings, research, and mounting frustration. I started documenting everything. Photos of the damaged materials, logs of every interaction with the Homeowner Association, and even recordings of phone calls. But Karen and her allies weren't slowing down. One evening, as I was going through my notes, a knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find my neighbor Sarah standing there with a nervous expression. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I nodded and stepped aside. Sarah was one of the few people in the neighborhood who had been friendly since the tornado. She'd brought over meals and offered to help with Emma when I was overwhelmed. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, wringing her hands. "But I overheard something at the last Homeowner Association meeting. Karen was talking about your case, and it didn't sound right." "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning forward. "She said something about making an example out of you," Sarah explained. "And she mentioned a deal with the construction company. I think they're planning to force you out so they can redevelop your property." My jaw tightened. "Did anyone else hear this?" Sarah hesitated. "I think so, but I don't know if they'll admit it. Most people are too scared to go against Karen." "Thank you, Sarah," I said. "This helps more than you know." After she left, I felt a renewed sense of determination. If Karen wanted a fight, she was going to get one. Armed with Sarah's information, I started digging deeper into the construction company's background. It didn't take long to uncover a trail of lawsuits, shady deals, and connections to Karen's inner circle. One night, while reviewing my findings, I noticed headlights outside. Peering through the curtains, I saw a black SUV idling across the street. My heart raced. Was I being watched? Or was this just paranoia? The next morning, I found a new notice taped to my door. This one accused me of creating a hostile environment for my neighbors. It was laughable, but it was also another attempt to paint me as the villain. I called a meeting with my lawyer and shared everything I'd gathered so far. He was impressed but cautious. "This is good," he said, "but it's not enough. You need a smoking gun." "I'll get it," I promised. As the weeks went on, the pressure mounted. The Homeowner Association's tactics became more aggressive, more fines, more threats, and even public shaming at community events. Karen reveled in it, turning my plight into a spectacle. But I refused to back down. One evening, as I was sorting through documents, Emma came up to me. "Dad," she said softly, "why is Karen being so mean to us?" I pulled her into a hug. "Because some people don't like it when others stand up to them," I said. "But don't worry. We're going to be okay." Her faith in me was the push I needed. That night, I resolved to take the fight to the next level. Karen and her cronies had underestimated me. It was time to show them what I was capable of. The turning point came on a cold, rainy evening when a small, unexpected package arrived at my temporary rental. It was a nondescript brown envelope with no return address. Inside, I found a USB drive and a typed note that simply read, "The truth you're looking for." My heart raced as I plugged the drive into my laptop. The files contained a series of incriminating emails between Karen and the construction company. The messages detailed their plan to use my property as a key part of a lucrative redevelopment project. Karen's tone was unmistakably smug, referring to me as the last obstacle and expressing confidence that a few fines and legal threats would drive me out. I printed the emails and immediately called my lawyer. "This is it," I said, barely able to contain my excitement. "This proves everything. The harassment, the corruption, the collusion. They've been planning this from the start. This changes the game," he agreed. "We can file a counterclaim and request an injunction to stop their actions. But you'll need to be prepared for retaliation. They won't take this lying down." And they didn't. The very next day, a crew from the construction company showed up at my property, claiming they had authorization to begin excavation for community improvements. I rushed over, waving the emails and demanding they stop. The foreman shrugged, saying he was just following orders from the Homeowner Association. I called the police, but when they arrived, Karen was already on the scene, playing the role of the concerned community leader. "This is a misunderstanding," she said sweetly, waving at the officers. "Mr. Carter is just upset because he's not following the proper procedures. I have proof that this is illegal," I argued, holding up the emails. "They're trying to steal my land." One of the officers took the emails to review, while the other tried to de-escalate the situation. Karen, ever the actress, gasped dramatically. "Steal his land? That's ridiculous. We're improving the community for everyone." The officer returned, his expression serious. "These emails are concerning," he said, turning to Karen. "We'll need to investigate further. In the meantime, I'm advising the crew to halt all work until this is resolved." Karen's smile faltered for the briefest moment before she regained her composure. "Of course, officer. We'll cooperate fully." As the construction crew packed up and left, I felt a small victory, but I knew it wasn't over. That night I received another call from an unknown number. This time, it was a veiled threat. A deep, gravelly voice warned me to drop the case if I knew what was good for me. I recorded the call and added it to the growing pile of evidence. My lawyer was impressed but concerned. "They're getting desperate," he said. "That's a good sign for us, but it also means they're dangerous." Over the next few weeks, the pressure intensified. My utilities were mysteriously cut off again, forcing me and Emma to rely on bottled water and candles. Flyers appeared around the neighborhood, accusing me of being selfish and holding up community progress. Karen's smear campaign was in full swing, but it only strengthened my resolve. Then came the hearing. The courtroom was packed with neighbors, most of them siding with Karen. She sat at the plaintiff's table, her confidence radiating as her lawyer presented their case. But when it was my turn, I watched her mask slip as my lawyer methodically laid out the evidence. The emails, the threats, the financial ties between her and the construction company. The final blow came when Sarah testified, confirming that Karen had openly discussed her plans to force me out. Karen's lawyer scrambled to counter the damage, but it was too late. The judge ordered an immediate injunction against any construction on my property and demanded a full investigation into the Homeowner Association's practices. As we left the courtroom, Karen shot me a venomous glare. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Maybe," I replied, meeting her gaze, "but not as much as you will." That night, for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. The battle wasn't over, but I'd proven that I wouldn't be intimidated. This was my home, and I was ready to fight for it until the end. The weeks following the courtroom hearing were a whirlwind of tension and cautious optimism. While the judge's ruling had halted the construction on my property and called for an investigation into the Homeowner Association, Karen wasn't backing down. Her influence within the community ran deep, and her allies began to make their presence felt in increasingly insidious ways. One afternoon, as Emma and I were returning from the grocery store, we noticed a crowd gathered near our property. A large banner had been erected across the entrance, reading "Community Over Chaos" in bold letters. Beneath it, a group of Karen supporters stood with signs accusing me of selfishness and disrupting neighborhood harmony. "What is this?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "It's just noise," I said, though my clenched fists betrayed my frustration. "Let's go inside." But as we approached the gate, one of the protesters stepped forward. "You don't belong here anymore, Carter," he sneered. "Why don't you do everyone a favor and leave?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "This is my home," I said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." The man smirked but didn't press further. For now, the situation diffused, but the message was clear. Karen's campaign against me was far from over. Inside, I found another letter taped to the door. This one was from the Homeowner Association's legal team, informing me of a new set of fines for violating community standards. Among the charges was an absurd claim that the color of my temporary trailer didn't match the aesthetic guidelines. It was petty and vindictive, and I knew it was only meant to wear me down. Determined not to let Karen's tactics break me, I doubled down on my efforts. I reached out to local media, sharing my story of harassment and corruption. A reporter from a regional news station took interest, and soon a camera crew was on my property, capturing footage of the damaged materials, the protest signs, and my stack of evidence against the Homeowner Association. Karen's reaction was swift. The very next day, I received a cease and desist letter accusing me of defamation. My lawyer assured me it was an empty threat, but it was another reminder of the lengths she would go to protect her control. Then one evening, a break came. Sarah, my neighbor who had testified against Karen in court, called me in a panic. "John, you need to see this," she said, her voice trembling. She sent over a video file, recorded secretly during a recent Homeowner Association board meeting. In it, Karen was caught openly discussing her plans to redirect community resources, a thinly veiled admission of embezzlement. She even joked about how easy it was to manipulate the board members and contractors. "This is the smoking gun," I told my lawyer. "She's done." We submitted the video as part of our ongoing legal battle. The fallout was immediate. Local authorities launched a formal investigation into the Homeowner Association, and Karen's allies began to distance themselves from her. News outlets picked up the story, turning Karen into a pariah almost overnight. But Karen wasn't one to go quietly. One night, as Emma and I were settling in, we heard a loud crash outside. I rushed to the window to find that someone had thrown a brick through it. Attached was a note scrawled in red ink. "Last warning." I called the police, but there was little they could do without evidence of who was responsible. The incident shook Emma, and I knew we couldn't stay in the house until it was safe. We moved into a hotel while the investigation continued, but I refused to abandon the fight. As the investigation unfolded, more evidence of Karen's corruption came to light. Bank records showed payments from the construction company to her personal account, and several former board members came forward, admitting they had been coerced into supporting her schemes. By the time the case went to trial, Karen's empire had crumbled. In the courtroom, Karen's once confident demeanor was replaced by a look of desperation. She denied everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering the Homeowner Association to pay restitution for the damages they had caused. Karen herself faced criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. As I left the courthouse, a wave of relief washed over me. The fight had taken its toll, but it was worth it. Emma and I could finally start rebuilding our lives without the shadow of Karen and her cronies looming over us. Back on my property, I stood among the rubble and took a deep breath. The battle was over, but the journey was just beginning. This was more than just a victory for me. It was a reminder that standing up for what's right is never easy, but it's always worth it.